Welcome to a brand new Xiao tutorial series. In this video lesson and many more to come, we're going to be going through everything step by step on how to play the Xiao, or the vertically played Chinese bamboo flute. In today's lesson, we're going to be starting off with the fundamentals and going through your basic posture from standing and sitting, as well as some embouchure details or how to make that seal. Together, this will help you make your very first sound on the Xiao. So, grab your flute, let's get started. Now, before we start learning any music or doing any special techniques with the Xiao, it's really important that we start with good posture. I like to think that the Xiao is actually only half the instrument, and the other half is us. How we stand and how we sit is going to affect how we breathe. And that breath is going to create not only the volume and the length of each note, but it's also going to create the pitch, the register, even the color of each sound. So it's very important that we start with the best possible conditions so that we can have the best possible sound come out of our Xiao. So when you first start, it's going to be a lot easier to stand and practice. And that's just because we distribute our weight, we drop the shoulders, drop the diaphragm, breathe from the belly, and it's a lot easier to get a powerful, sustained, and overall controlled sound out of your Xiao. But I found that over time, the average player is going to spend a lot more time in a seated practice, whether that's in a chair or in a meditation posture, sitting on your heels. That's going to become probably your go-to day-to-day practice, okay? Otherwise, they're pretty similar. We want to keep the same empty chest, we want to breathe deeply, we want to keep the shoulders relaxed and the elbows out from the body, okay? But with a standing practice, one thing we do want to make sure is we bring everything up to eye level. So I'm talking about sheet music, right? If we're looking at notation, if we're reading something, we want to make sure we bring that up and elevate it. So that way we can look forward and not down, right? Because the dropping of the chin, the dropping of the shoulders and the elbows to the body is going to affect the sound. You're going to overblow and just not have a clear sound, okay? So it's really important, bring everything up to eye level so that way you can maintain good posture while standing. Now while sitting, very similar, but the things to look out for here is we want to keep our place unobstructed, right? Because I've seen a lot of people practice at a desk. I know I'm guilty of it as well. And dropping the flute close to the body so that way you can compensate for the space you have, right? So it's better just to open up your space and stand straight and open up, okay? Also, another thing for seated practice, the way you sit is going to affect how you play. So we want to make sure we're actually sitting back on the sit bones, right? So there's a bone called the ischial tuberosity, right? And this is a bone at the bottom of the hip, just an extension to where if we sit back on it, we drop the weight through the spine. So that way we can breathe a little bit more deeply, a little more comfortably, and it's easier to sustain practice, okay? A lot of people might end up slouching. That's going to create an inefficient breath, as well as extending the back and opening the chest. Then you're going to get a really shallow breath, and it's going to be hard to do long progressions in songs, okay? So make sure we sit back and don't sit forward where you're kind of almost sitting on the hamstrings, right? We want to sit back on the sit bones, okay? So really important 2 points for seated practice. So then we can move into making your embouchure, okay? So this is how you make the seal on the end of the flute. I would recommend having a closed node bamboo where this is still here. You might have one that's empty where this is missing, and that's just going to be a little bit more difficult to find the specific placement. So I would recommend starting with this because it's going to be a lot easier to find the right place, okay? So that place is at the bottom of this cutout, of the Xiao. We want to place that line on the vermilion border, basically where your lip begins and ends, right? That edge of the lip right there. So that part of the lip is very sensitive, right? And we can feel it pretty well if we place the flute softly right on that line, okay? You'll notice if you do that, you'll end up resting the flute right on your chin. And hopefully when you move, it moves with your chin so that no matter what, you actually come back to the same place, okay? And that's going to come into play when you're actually playing music and you need to take a breath. If you do breathe through the mouth, then you're not going to lose your place, okay? So what we can do, we find that vermilion border, we place the line of the cutout right there. And then what you can do for added effect is you can dip the head down and the top of the lip, right in the center, the top lip should fit in the top of the cutout. It should basically fall right in place. And then you just sit back up, neutral chin position, and that way you know you're in the right place, okay? Now, the next most important thing is the posture of the Xiao itself, right? So we want to make sure we're standing, we're looking forward, or we're sitting, empty chest, sit back. We place it on that vermilion border, and we relax, and we want to keep the flute at a downward 45-degree angle. Okay, so this is really important because if we change the angle of the flute, you're going to change the pitch slightly. You're going to get more flat the higher you go, and you're going to get more sharp the lower you go. So 45 degrees, that's where we want to start. Easiest way to do this is make your first sound. Don't worry about closing any of the holes. Hold the bottom of the flute with your right hand. Find your placement. Sit back or stand comfortably. Look forward and make a small puckering of the lips. So it's almost like spitting seeds out is the example I was given before, where you just go, right? It's going to be a little bit out. You're not going to overblow like a jug where you're blowing downward. You're kind of going to go blow forward. And the air is actually cutting on the edge of the flute where this cutout is. And that's what creates the sound. And then the different fingering later, right? So we place it there. We drop it down to 45 degrees. And we make a solid, steady blow, right? Okay, and you can work on sustains, but that's going to be the easiest place to find your note. If you hear overblowing, for example, one of two things: either you're too big on the lips or you're too low with the bell. You're too low with the edge of the flute. You're dropping it down. So what you can do is you can just work on the angle. Just blow steady. Don't change your breath, but just blow. And bring the flute up slowly until you find that place. Don't worry about trying to adjust too quickly, right? We want to make small adjustments throughout. So don't overcompensate, right? So we find our placement. For example, I start too low and I build my way up. And if you hear the opposite, until you can find the middle balance where you can keep a good sustained sound. That's the angle you want to stay at, and you want to get more sensitive to that position. So I would recommend doing it a few times, taking your mouth off and resetting and seeing if you can come back to that same place again and again. So now we have our basic posture, whether it's standing or sitting. We have our embouchure and we have the angle of the flute all corrected, and we're making a sound. Now I'm going to give you what I call the home base of the Xiao. And this is very much the same, like if you're typing at a keyboard, then you put your fingers on a certain place to begin with. Same thing with the Xiao. So we actually want to start with the ring finger of the right hand on the second hole from the bottom, right? And then we're going to do the middle finger on the left in that middle hole on the top, okay? And for now, we're also going to close the thumb hole on the back of the Xiao. So these 3 points are going to be your basic beginning point, probably the easiest note for you to play in the early stages. This will be 3 or mi, okay? But we're going to start here and just work on sustains, work on long breaths and long sustains of each note. Okay, from this point, I want to make sure that you're also putting the pad of the finger down. Either you're using the first and doing a half piper, or you're using the second pad and doing a full piper. That might be a little harder, but either way, you want to use the pad of the finger and not the tip of the finger. You don't want to have the knuckles bent out. You actually want to maintain everything pretty flat. It's going to be a lot more soft, and later on it's going to be a lot quicker for you to do transitions. So make sure you keep the knuckles flat, keep on the pads of the fingers and not the tips. That's really important. But for now, really simple: the ring finger second hole, the middle finger in the top middle, and your thumb on the back. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing that we did before. So we're going to work on just a sustained note. So we get our position, we relax, take a nice deep breath, pause. The same thing goes. If you hear too much air coming up, you know you're either too high with the chin or too low with the flute. So we can correct, or we can correct, right? So it all depends on those angles, right? Either from the chin or from the flute itself. So work on that, and then you can just basically go one finger down, and that'll drop you one note all the way down, one pitch each time. So we're starting with 3, then we're dropping into 2, into 1, and all the way down. Then you can work on just getting long sustained breaths on each one individually. That's going to be the best way to set you up, and you'll be ready to play music in no time. So there you go. That should be everything you need to know to get started. Hopefully you're already playing your first sounds on the Xiao. I also have a bunch of information on my website, thewaysofwudang.com/wudao-music. There you can find history, information, how to play, tutorials, sheet music, and notation as well. So feel free to check that out. Everything is free. I hope that it inspires you and enriches your practice. Make sure you subscribe, and every week I'll be back with a few more tips and tricks that you can do to improve your Xiao practice. Happy playing, and we'll catch you next time.